welcome to Writer's Realm Podcast, and thank you for joining us as we journey through writing together. We're your hosts, Bob Adaudo,
Holly Robilliard.
And Austin Matthews.
and today we're going to be talking about authors and AI. But first, let's just talk about what we're doing. What are we working on, Austin?
So with November done, I'm trying to figure out how to get back into what I was working on before. So I'm like, I think 82 chapters into a book that's going to round out at 120 chapters. So trying to get, right back in the heat of things and, figure out where all my characters are at. And so that's going to take a couple of weeks just to really get the ball rolling. So
What's the book? I mean, what is this? Is this your November project or something else? Or
This is something else. So this is my Kindle Vela. I ended up putting it on pause during November. And so trying to pick it back up as we really hit the climax. So it's, a high fantasy setting with like hard magic, but it's superheroes. And so just doing this weird little twist of like, oh yeah, it's traditional fantasy, but also mixed with superheroes. And kind of trying to figure out who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. They're all kind of morally gray. So yeah, it's just a lot of fun and, getting ready to kill everybody off. So we're at that time of the book.
Now you said you're at 80 and you want to get to 120. So is it like you already set that in place? Like I want 120 chapters out of this?
Yeah, so it's got a pretty rigid story structure to it. So it's got 3 main perspective characters. And so it does 9 chapters, or it rotates perspectives through each one of them 9 times. And it gives you a side character for 3 as an interlude. So it's like 30 chapters as a chunk 4 times. So it's a pretty, rigid structure for myself.
Goodness gracious, that is very rigid. But I mean, hey, if it works, it works, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
All right. And then Holly, what are you working on?
Yeah, so I'm still continuing on with my November project. So I'm working on Heartbound. I'm about 40 chapters in right now. I did kind of an outline for this, so I knew what I was expecting myself to have for each chapter. But then I gave myself leeway to just kind of create things as I was going. So that's been really, really fun because I've discovered a lot about these characters, and the book has taken on a completely different direction than I expected it to or that I had planned for it. So that's been like a really fun journey for me. However, now that I'm about halfway through, some of the changes that have happened in the book no longer make sense with what I had outlined. So I kind of have had to take a step back the last couple of days and just go through and say, like, okay, this is where I'm at right now. This is my end goal. How are we still going to get there without having to rewrite everything? Now that I have that done, I'm looking forward to kind of heading on forward. So I think it's going to be okay. I've accidentally forgotten to write about a couple characters, so that also is challenging. But I mean, I guess if they weren't that important for me to realize that until 15 chapters or 25 chapters later, then I guess they weren't that important to the story. So,
and this is the joys of pantsing, right? Like you just, you're like make a fun character in chapter 8 or whatever, chapter 5, and then yeah, like you said, 40 chapters later, like, oh wait a second, where's this guy?
Yeah. And the fun thing about that is it's like it doesn't all have to be lost. Like you can cut them out and keep their like the way that you like personify them and all those things, and like, see if they fit in some other book later. So
absolutely.
Yep. Absolutely.
How about you, Bob? What are you working on?
Nothing. And I'm not I'm not kidding. I gave myself like a week off.
That's good.
Which has extended where are we at? Yeah, Monday. I'm actually now it's a week and 2 days. But like what I was writing for my November project, I was actually getting really frustrated because I didn't like not where it was headed, but I was like, oh my gosh, I have to write. I'm like trying to fill it in. For just our quick recap, obviously we started it and it's called Death by Invitation Only. And it's just pretty much a retelling of the H.H. Holmes. So this is a real person making a real hotel. They call it a murder hotel where he'd invite guests in and then he would kill them in different ways. atrocious, but I thought I'd take advantage of that and create a story out of it. And it's not a comedy or anything. I'm sorry for laughing, but it's just
Yeah, but I hear it's a real killer experience.
It's a killer hotel. Wow. So
yeah, the service is to die for.
It's the service is to die for. Holly almost spit out a drink. But but yeah, so and I got stuck a little bit, and so I wrote the ending. So I have the beginning and the ending, and now I got to fill in the middle. And I think there's something there that was frustrating me. Like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I was just spending too much time with it. So I just said, you know what? I'm going to put it down. I'm going to walk away. And I'm so far, like I said, I'm 9 days into like no writing at all. And I haven't forgotten about it. I'm going to get back into it as soon as possible. But I just started up, as we as writers love all these other ideas and stuff. And so I started writing up a new series, I hope. And it's going to be a Ren Fair cozy, like with some supernatural elements. It's going to be, I know I want a male protagonist, and he's going to be invited to the Ren Fair like he's never been. He meets all these interesting characters, and little by little he discovers, like, wait a second, that's a real spell that's being worked, or wait a second, this is a real knight. So it's going to be kind of a fun, cozy mystery series.
So you primarily write female main characters, right?
I do.
Because Coil and Fang, that's
right.
all female characters. So is this like your first time making that transition, or have you done other pieces that are that perspective?
No, I did a male protagonist story. It was a story submission which got rejected. His name is Darius King, and he was like a hitman for monsters, or specifically to kill monsters. Like, hey, we need this zombie dead, or we need this vampire dead, or whatever. So he's just some badass muscle man guy, just and yeah, so I wrote him, but he's just very, very overly tough and overly, brawny, and just a big lizard brain guy, kind of very simple. But yeah, so this will be a little bit more, it'll be fun. I kind of want a cozy mystery because they're a lot of fun. There's a lot of humor in there, just to keep it light. You know what I mean? It's just a light read before bedtime kind of a thing.
I love that. I think there's nothing better than like sitting there and just like giggling away with a book, right?
Yeah.
Like I like when I'm reading something and I'm having so much fun reading it that people are like, what is that? Like, what are you reading? What's going on over there?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm going for. I'm going for some light humor and just something light and easy, because these books that I'm writing, I mean, I just explained what in the Death by Invitation Only is like a real murder case. And it's my dark humor that wants to, I'm not making fun of anyone or anything, but the situation is such that you need to laugh. Like, goodness gracious, it's just for me, it's just too heavy, and I don't want to write that all the time.
Yeah, and I would say, like, given your experience, like, on the job and stuff too, like, there's a certain level of dark humor. Like, I know working in, like, the ambulance industry, like, we get a lot of that kind of dark humor, because it's like, it's really the only way that you can continue through your day after something, like, really heavy happens.
Yes. Yeah. Can I share a story? I'm going to share a story.
Yeah, 100%.
I won't say how, but one night.
I'm worried already.
It was a dark, stormy night. And then we got a call of some water splashing. And so, something happened. Coronado Bridge, unfortunately, a lot of people, seek to end their life there. So, but so we found water up on the piling. So somebody jumped, But what they did find were 2 arms. They didn't find anything else but 2 arms. And it was so strange and baffling, and we were just like, what is going on? Now, there's no jokes here, nothing, but it's just like that. That's the kind of thing you're like, what the heck is going on here, right? That sounds like a perfect start to a murder mystery. But
it does.
Yeah, but it's also my dark humor that really wants to make a joke about you being caught disarmed.
So. Oh, what the heck? Wow. No, but one of the officers was like, hey, anybody need a back scratcher? And that was That was their dark humor. That was not me. That was not me.
That's pretty bad.
That was bad, yeah.
Oh.
But anyway, it's gruesome like that. So yeah, you kind of
Yeah.
need. You're right.
You have to do
Yeah.
it to get through that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard.
Any of those, police, fire, ambulance, nurses,
Mhm.
they all have some sort of a dark, like, oh gosh, just to get through it. Wow, this took a turn. I'm really sorry about that for all our
Hey, no.
listeners.
Yeah, I know. It's like we're going through the depths of human emotion, and then we're going to talk
Yes.
about AI.
Which has
What
a
a segue.
complete it's a complete lack of human emotions in AI.
Yes,
Though.
that's a perfect transition.
That's our advantage as humans, is that we do have a soul and a heart, and we do have emotions that we can convey.
For now.
Some of us do.
You're right.
Wow.
You're right.
Shots
no.
fired.
Wow. Yeah. Well, yeah. So AI. I mean, I think I thought of this topic just recently. I'm looking into our audio editor for our podcast isn't able to do it, and so I was looking around, like, because it's kind of it's a huge learning curve, and none of us here know how to. We could learn, but like then it's taking time away from something else, and for me, I don't want to do that. But it was weird because I found AI assisted podcast editors where it'll do it all for you. You just pay a flat fee and it does all this stuff for you. And I was looking into it, and I just never thought of that. Like, wow, it's I didn't sign up for it because I wanted to ask questions. No one ever got back to me. Probably the whole thing's probably run by AI, so I don't know. They're not, no customer service there. But yeah, so I was just thinking about, like, wow, I never thought about that. And then we have all these other subtopics in here that I wrote down. AI with writing. There's ChatGPT, cover art, character art, editing, and then audiobooks I just mentioned briefly. There's probably some other stuff. But so I don't know, where are we at with that? Who's got a hot take? Who's loyal to the machine lords, and they're gonna just start talking for them here? I don't know.
I mean, if we want hot takes, I just recently changed my stance on it.
Okay. From what to what?
Okay, so I have a background in art. Like, yeah, I'm an author and everything, but like my first degree is in painting. So like not digital art, it's just straight up oil painting. So like part of me was like, okay, I don't know how I feel about this. That doesn't feel great. Like obviously it's taking away jobs from people. And I was, kind of against it, but then slowly started to be like, okay, maybe AI is fine because it's kind of like cameras. It gave art to people that couldn't afford to purchase paintings before, and it democratized art. Now, this is sounding like I'm going to be anti-AI in the end because I'm starting to sound like I'm pro-AI. But I have come to realize that like my big fear with AI isn't that people are going to use it for creative works, it's that people are going to use it for factual works. It's not the nonfiction that worries me, it's the number of people that are relying on AI for nonfiction. So
like, what are we talking about? Like memoirs or news, or what are you
yeah, so like news. So like, I mean, we've kind of talked about it a little bit. It's like the idea of asking ChatGPT a question as opposed to Googling it, or like, looking for actual news articles and those kind of things, because AI isn't like truthful. Like that's not how it works.
Right.
It seeks to emulate being a person. And part of that is this ambiguity of language and this falsehood that is present in there. So like I was playing around with ChatGPT, or no, Bard, which is the Google AI. And like I asked it for like reviews on my book. Well, I know the reviews on my book and I can go and search for them. It like straight up made up a review for my book.
Oh.
And it's like, well, where did you find this? And it was like, oh, I found it on Goodreads. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go to Goodreads and check this. And I was like, hey, Bart, did you just make this up? And it's like, yeah, sorry. Like legit, just apologize for lying to me. And so like, that's the thing, is that like, if you don't fact check it, like there's a lot of things that could become problems. And like, I know the big Terminator fear is that like, oh, AI is going to rise up and they're going to like murder everybody. But no, I think the real issue is that people are just going to be like, oh, what is the most efficient way to schedule my day? And then just listen to AI and like consign themselves, like you said, to the AI overlords. So like, really, like if you want to help it, use it to help you outline your book. Be like, hey, like my constant example is if I want to say, hey, can you give me like a 7-point structure for, Grimdark Pokemon? It's
Mhm.
going to do it and it's going to be fine. And I'm going to have to rework the whole thing and it's not going to matter. Like it's going to look so different than whatever it gives me. I don't think that's where the issue lies.
Mhm.
I think it's people going, hey, who should I vote for?
Mm. That or because misinformation, disinformation is a really
It's,
big thing the past
it's so
decade.
complicated. Hmm.
And right, and like who do you trust, right? Because like just a little bit of something can just really be just grow like wildfire and like everyone believes it all of a sudden,
Yeah.
like, okay, well that guy said it, so it's totally true, and nobody does even any research on it. They don't go look for it, they just believe it, like, okay.
Yeah. Because it's so hard for AI to know what's true and what's not because that's what it's really like looking
And it
for.
doesn't even care, it could care less, it just looks for information, period, right?
Yeah, no, down the road we might have things for that, but I don't want to get too far down in the weeds there.
Right.
So like focusing on my hot take of it in the writing sphere is like I think it's a great tool in the same way that Magic Select is a great tool in Photoshop. So like if you're using it to help you like make sense of your own ideas and put them to paper a little bit faster, as long as it's just like this, framework that you're working with, a scaffolding system that helps you do you faster
Mm.
or more efficiently or a little bit better, like I think that's great. It's whenever you're completely replacing a process
Mm.
is when it's an issue.
So completely replacing in a process, I would feel like cover art would be for your books.
Yes,
That would
100%.
be, and that's hard because I was talking to this a real cover artist who uses Photoshop, and he's
Hmm.
fantastic. I mean, he's winning awards. He's doing fantastic work. And I was talking to him about it, and he says, "You know what? We're really afraid of this because
Hmm.
AI cover art can be made within seconds, and it looks
Hmm.
fantastic, and that's going to put us out of a job." You know what I'm saying? Like, so that's,
Yeah.
it's going to replace it. Because why? Because like we have a lot of new writers that money's limited for most everyone, right? And if you're gonna, I mean, if you're talking to us and if you're gonna ask me where to put the money, I would tell you to go put it in editing, rather than the cover. But I mean,
Yeah.
I'm toying around with an AI
Hmm.
art machine, if you will,
Hmm.
and it costs me $8 a month to monkey around with it. I've sent you guys examples in the past. It's just
Yeah.
insane what it can come up with, and it looks fantastic. And it's like I said, $8 a month compared to a real person who's really working on it. But that's going to be hundreds or even $1,000. I
Yeah.
just went shopping. Um, on Facebook for an artist that I love. He does both. He does oils and
Hmm.
digital, and he's fantastic. $1,000, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna see how I can save up that money, because I definitely want you working on. I
Hmm.
want your work, but I can just see most people are like, I'm not spending $1,000. I have
Yeah.
like a budget of 80, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and, like, that's a hard thing because, like, to your point, it's, like, between spending that money on editing or spending it on a cover, like, a cover is gonna get you a purchase because, like, as much as we say don't judge a book by a cover its cover, 100%, like, that's making promises, and you should judge a book by its cover, sorry,
Yeah. Yep.
um,
You
but,
should.
like, it gets you 1 purchase, but the editing is what's gonna get you purchases of your other books,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so it's, like, that's the thing that you really wanna invest in is, like, having good content,
Right.
but it's, like, it's such a struggle because you want both.
Yeah.
But it is hard,
Yep.
especially in the indie sphere.
Hmm.
I think it's really interesting too, because we're at a point now where we're going to start transitioning, well, maybe not quite yet, but we will be transitioning from, you have people, like you said, who work in art and they do all of this physical art, right? And they're the ones that we currently pay for these items. And now we're kind of in this gray area where it's like AI is taking over, but now there's people who put the time and the effort into doing the AI art. So now we're paying these people to do it. So
Hmm.
it's like, how
Mm,
bad
mhm,
can it really be? Because now you're
Hmm.
paying somebody else who's putting their time into it
Hmm.
versus before you were paying a different person who's putting their time into it in a different way.
Hmm.
yeah,
So it's really hard to, and I think that's where a lot of the controversy comes from, is because people don't really see like how it could be wrong, because you're like, well,
Mhm.
if I'm going to pay this person versus this person, what difference does it really make?
Yeah.
So it can
Yeah.
be a tough decision to make.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have a mystery pulp series that I'm working on, and it's set in the Industrial Revolution because like all those same ideas are brand new and relevant again because of AI and those kind of automation things. And so we're looking at this idea of like, okay, well, like the camera was invented around like back then. And it's like it took the same kind of jobs from people that like being a painter was a practical job. You could work for the government. You would go do landscaping for like to like be like, hey, this is the plot of land. I drew it out. Here you go. This is exactly where these like boundaries are. And it was like an actual practical day job. And
Mm.
so it took that away because they could just take a picture and it was a lot cheaper.
Mhm.
And so they had to go, well, what can I do that a camera can't? And so it is this whole new
Mm.
time period of like, okay, well, what can I do
Mhm.
that AI can't?
Mhm.
And it's getting us to be a scary narrow margin
Yeah.
of things that we can do. But part of it is like you get the craftsman movement of like
Yeah.
this production. It's like it's clunkier, it's messier because humans are messy.
Mhm.
And so like that's part of it is like our emotions are so complex and
Mhm.
contradictory and messy.
Mhm.
And I think that's what we bring as human beings to writing or art
Mhm.
is mistakes.
Mhm.
I can't remember what author it was that was saying like your writing style is just the mistakes that you repeatedly make.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think with art too, it's really interesting because it's like when you're drawing something, or it's the same thing with writing, like when you're creating something, your mind starts to think about, oh, like outline this a little bit more, do this a little bit more. And then it kind of takes on a mind of its own, right? And that's how, we form our stories and we form our drawings and we form our paintings. And AI doesn't have that ability. It's going to give you exactly what you ask for, but I
Mhm.
still think you're potentially missing out on something that could be even better because
Mhm.
again, you're like, hey, maybe this would be better if I tried it this way.
Mhm.
Whereas AI doesn't have the ability right now to do that. It just gives you exactly what you're asking for. And
Mhm.
sometimes we don't actually know what we want.
No, we never. I totally agree with that. We don't know what we want. We think we know what we want, but with the cover art, again, talking to this one artist, I was asking him like about copyright and all that, and he's like, "Yeah, right now it's if you just got like a raw image that AI created for you, it can't be copyrighted because it's
Hmm.
that's just not there yet because it obviously drew from it doesn't create it just copies from thousands of different files and puts it all back together. But he did say, but you know what? All you have to do is if you know how to use Photoshop or any of these other photo editing tools, you just change a little something in there and now it's
Hmm.
yours. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you just that's all you have to do. And you just add a mustache.
Yeah.
Like you add a mustache or whatever, a different hair color. And all of a sudden
Yeah.
now you can copy because now it's yours. It's now
Well,
your
I will
creation.
say, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, like, even as somebody who studied, painting as like my undergraduate degree, it's been one of those things. Like, we studied copyright law and like policies and stuff whenever I was in school, and it was a big thing of gray area back then. It just wasn't covered by the news. Like, now it's a popular thing to talk about and to cover in the news. I don't think copyright is the big issue of AI because it's always been fraught with, oh, you stole my style. And it's like even thinking about like the Obama change like picture, whereas like the red and the blue, like there was some copyright things over that because it was somebody else's photo, but then they like
Mhm.
colorized it. And it's like, well, was that enough of a change to get a
Mhm.
copyright on? And it's like,
Yeah.
it's always been complicated.
Yeah.
So that's not the big takeaway, I don't think, from the AI discussion because
No. Yeah.
it's people are going to do what they're going to do with your art,
Right.
whether it's AI generated or not. Sorry.
Right. Okay, so we
I
kind of.
think,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I think that it's really interesting too when it comes to character art, because that's something that I've looked into having done, because
Mhm.
I think character art is such a great way for people, especially for like with social media and like things like that. People love to be able to visualize your characters.
Yeah.
And then they also love to like, you read a book once or twice or three times or 10 times like me sometimes. And you keep reliving those scenes over and over, but then you have a visual of them and you can look at this visual, and
Hmm.
that's a way for people to get involved, right? Because
Yeah.
then they can create these scenes from your words, and they can create them from, you know, their aspect, because not everybody thinks about things the same way, right? And so I think that is really nice for people to be able to do, because it gets people involved with your work. It gets people involved with your characters. As an author, I think it's great because if there's a character like a book boyfriend or, you know, book girlfriend or something like that that people like, people go crazy for stuff like that. And then there's all these people out there who are creating character art from your works, and that's kind of like free advertising in a way, you know.
Okay,
So
yeah.
that is kind of also a different thing. Like I've thought about having I looked into paying an artist to do character art for me, because I just love the idea of being able to actually visualize those characters, and then I can use them when I'm, you know, advertising my work, or, you know, giving out quotes for different parts of the book and things like that.
Okay, so and you've used this, right, Holly? Character AI for character art,
I
and you
have.
shared that, right? I'm pretty sure.
I think I've managed to create one fun one that was like myself as a person if I was a character art. And aside from that, I have tried so many times to recreate what I'm looking for, and I cannot do it. I have tried, I've spent hours and hours.
Really?
I've always used, I think it's called Night Cafe. I've always tried using that one, and it's like, no matter how much I'm like, this is exactly what I'm looking for, it's like, all right, well, if you want a unicorn that looks like a dinosaur, well, it's got 8 heads and like wings, and, you know, like
it tries real hard.
it's so, I think it's so difficult. Like I have a hard time when it comes to art understanding why people have a problem with it, because I think it's so hard.
I will say, as somebody who's been writing like cosmic horror, it's been super helpful because it's really easy to get into the uncanny valley with AI art. But yeah, like you're saying, like I found actually like tooling around with it, like the way to get the thing that I want, I actually have to use like 4 different AI generation tools, and like I like process it through this site, through this thing. Like I draw out an image, put it through there, and then like process it there, move it over to another thing, and like do these like I probably spend, you know, 12 hours getting the image the way that I want. And I'm like, it's really probably not that much less work to get exactly what I want. Now, is AI faster to get to the 90% of what I want? Yes. But it's just as much work for me as a perfectionist to get it exactly how I want it as it would be to just draw it myself. But I also have a painting degree, so.
Okay. So would you support, I think, is it okay if we start like all these little subtopics I talked about a few minutes ago, character art being one of them, because we're on that right now, like we're in supportive or not supportive, or would that be too weird?
No, that's totally fine. I think I'm totally for character art. I use it a lot for my own stuff. Like I feel a little weird posting it just because of like how people react to it, but like I have no issues with it because it helps me. Like this is what the character looks like, so I'm going to keep describing them the same way, and it helps me.
Yeah, I agree. Holly, I think you're in support of it, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely in support of it. And I just want to add quickly too, if you're on Instagram, there is an artist on there who does a ton of AI character art and scene art. And I think it's Artworks by Roki, Rokii.
Yeah, I think I've seen that one before.
Yeah, and they have a really great segment that's pinned onto their Instagram where it shows like, this is how I go from my thought process, and this is how I get to the final product. And it's crazy because they go through and show you the steps where it's like, okay, well, this person has like a horn coming out of the middle of their head, and I wanted them to have wings. And then now I have to create a second image with wings. And then I have to cut those wings out of that image and put them on this. And like, you know, it's a lot of like, you know, taking from here, adding to there, and changing things. And I loved that kind of, for me, it was really interesting to see, because then you could see how it's actually put together. It's not just like, hey, this is what I want, and 10 seconds later I get it.
Now, can I ask if they charge money for this? Probably, I guess, or no?
That I think a lot of it is just, I mean, I think they do have like a Patreon page or something like that. One of those pages where you can order some things. However, a lot of their stuff is just up on Instagram, I think, because they just really enjoy doing it. It's a lot of popular characters from popular books, but they're incredible. They're amazing.
So it's not necessarily like a service, like, hey, we'll create your character for you.
Yeah, I don't think so. I've never seen them advertising anything that says like, hey,
Right.
do this,
Okay.
try
Mhm.
my work or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Okay, yeah, and I'm with you guys. I'm on Discord. There is an AI program or a Discord server called Mid Journey, MID
Mhm.
Journey, and that's who I give my $8 to. They're it's incredible. Like they can give you cartoony stuff, photorealistic stuff. I'm looking at all the different things right now, all kinds of different art styles, whatever you want. It's insane. But yeah, no, I've used it for all of my characters. I feel like it's, and I can draw, I can paint, and I have crayons and everything. But using Midjourney is just, I mean, I'm just sitting here and I just put it in, I put the info in, and I get the image, and I'm like, oh my god, this is it, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm totally for using AI for character art. Just, and I don't know, I'm not. I would. I don't know why I haven't yet, but I would totally share it on, what my characters look like, and I would just say, hey, this is, I did this is an AI version of my characters here, and I think Holly's got it on the nose. We want to know as readers, we want to. It helps
Mhm.
us, right, to visualize that, and just kind of, it's a living, breathing character instead of just in your mind kind of a thing, and it definitely helps to, you know, put a face to the name, as it were.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm totally for using AI for character art.
Yeah, especially since it's something that's usually so internally facing, like, it's something that is a tool a lot for me as a writer, and it's like, yeah, it's also helpful for the reader, but it's not something that I like if I didn't have AI, I don't think I would be paying for, and I think that's one of the key distinctions for me,
Mm,
is I'm not taking money that I would normally be paying somebody and then, like, removing that from them.
uh,
Um, so it's like if it's an I mean, this is getting into the other things, like illustrations for the actual books is a
mhm.
service that you would normally pay for, or the cover
Yep.
art.
Yep.
So moving on to cover art, like I don't
Right.
know that I'm super comfortable with that
Mhm.
because that is a
Mhm.
service I would normally pay for.
Yeah.
And so that's where it starts to feel like a really wishy-washy gray area for me.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. And then for me, I would totally pay somebody. I'd rather go through the
Mhm.
trouble, which
Right.
which it isn't in a way, because this is, now we're talking about real art, in a
Mhm.
sense. And I would rather save up some money to pay some,
Right.
which I have right now. My own covers I did myself, only because, I mean, hey, it's $600 or you do it yourself, and I'm decent at what I do, so you can
Mhm.
go. I mean, you can let me know as my covers are up on Amazon, Coil and Fang, but it's so obvious that they're homemade, but I like them. I mean, I haven't heard anything bad. I mean, maybe they're just being polite whenever they see their covers. But I really do love the really beautiful covers, but like it just costs money.
Yeah.
So if I could do something similar myself and create it, then I'm going to do it. But yeah, I would, if anyone is asking me like, hey, should I just get an AI cover? I'm like, it's, I think in the long run, it's going to be frowned upon, because
Mhm.
there's a lot of great artists, and they're not all expensive. There's some new artists
No.
coming up that
I mean, just go on Fiverr and, like, pay somebody,
do
like,
that.
whatever
Yeah,
they're asking for. Like,
yeah,
you can get some pretty like, people that just wanna get the experience
right,
and, like, you can get them for a pretty good deal.
yeah. Now, is it a okay? Actually, we should ask Holly before I get
Yes.
into more stuff. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm totally on board with that as well. I would pay someone to do a cover. I just think that a cover is something that's going to be sitting up on my shelf. I'm going to be walking by and looking at it and patting
Yeah,
it every day.
yeah,
And I want it to be something that, I know has had like a lot of care put into it. And like, you think about like how much time you spent on a book. I don't want a cover that's done in 5 seconds.
right,
I want something that someone has put as much thought into as I've put into my book.
right.
So,
Yeah, some soul, right? Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I like that. All right, so we got that. All right, how about writing, the writing portion of it? We're all
Define
against it, right?
writing. Hot take, define writing.
The writing is like you sit in front of the computer and you write 3 words and then change your mind a half hour later.
Oh yeah, that's definitely. I mean, if AI could do that for me, just the 3 words per hour, that'd be great. Well, because like it's one of those things. Like if I'm I like I talked about my pulp mystery novel. Like I didn't know too much about it, so like I used it as a research tool, and I was like, okay, well, like what are the typical beats of a pulp mystery novel? And so like, is that research? Is that it writing for me? It's like this weird gray area because like yeah, I could have Googled it and then like copied and pasted that and then like written my story on the outline of those beats. And so like I don't know. Like it's complicated. Like I don't want it writing for me,
Mhm.
but where is the border between writing and research? So
Well, I mean, it's not going to be in your book, right? You're going to do some.
no.
You ask ChatGPT or whatever program. You know, I need to know what hospitalization looked like in 1890, right?
Hmm.
And it would spit it back at me.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and I mean, I could see that, like, well, sure. I mean,
Hmm.
but that doesn't go into my story. That's just me. I mean, I could see probably somebody, you know, could copy paste it, I guess, if you wanted, but I don't know why. But I mean, it saves time. Okay, so I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, you have to write a story. Like we're talking about cozy mystery. It could probably be done in like what, I don't know, like 10 minutes or something. I have no idea how fast these things could write, but versus months, right, where we spend,
Hmm.
you know. So I mean, I'm totally. To me, it doesn't make sense, and I feel like it's the sense of discovery as you as a person. I mean, if you're trying to just make money, then okay, I guess. I mean, that's your thing, but so you're not a
Right.
real writer, is what I would say. You're just like some, I don't know, some other kind of artist. But
It's
I
like
feel,
Yeah.
it's like having a free ghostwriter, I feel like,
uh-huh,
is what
yeah,
AI, you know what I mean? Like it's just
Hmm.
right, yeah,
Yeah. Well, I think it was like Adam Conover from Adam Ruins Everything and a million other things that was
mm,
talking about AI. And it's like, yeah, it could probably punch out a pretty good rough draft, but like if you're not going back and touching it up, it's gonna not be it's not one, it's not gonna be your work, but
yeah,
two, it's not gonna be, presentable
right,
or enjoyable.
right,
And like, yeah, maybe it could like be one of those things where it's like part of like this like mill press where it's just like constantly going
hmm,
and like maybe that's what some people need for like replacing their soaps or something kind of a thing.
hmm,
But like it's not going to be those like really intense, like enjoyable things that linger with you for the rest of your life.
right,
yeah.
and
And I
it,
think no, you go first.
okay, she pointed. I think for me, it's a fun accomplishment. I'm looking over
Hmm.
here on my shelf, and there's 3 books I wrote. If I write
Yeah.
one more, I've written as or published as many as Tolkien. But I mean that's where I'm at. But it's a
Well,
fun,
it
like I
depends
did
whether you
that.
count posthumously though,
Oh
because
brother, here we go. But no, it's just a fun accomplishment. Like wow, I
100%.
wrote this, man. Like
Mhm.
it still baffles me. Sometimes I have to go back through my files to look at what I wrote and like who I wrote about, and I'm like, and I'll just keep reading because it's so fun. You know, I'm
Hmm.
just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, right? And you can't. There's no way you could do that with this AI, you know, program just to write it out and just spit it out. It's like nothing to you. You know, it's just
Yeah.
a stack of words, and all right, let's hit publish and move on to the next one.
Yeah, and I think that's something we've talked about in writing group. Like, there's that moment of like rereading a earlier draft where you're like, I wrote that. But
Yeah.
like if you're using AI, you're like, did I write that? Like that would be a horrifying moment for me.
Oh yeah.
Holly, it's your turn.
Yeah, I don't mind using it for like again when I want to research something. Like if I know if I'm looking for a specific plant that's a certain color and has certain effects like toxicity levels and it, has to be found in like a certain climate, I might go through chat GPT and be like, hey, like this is what I'm looking for. And then I will punch out like 10 different ideas. And then I'll go through those 10 ideas and then I will Google those 10 ideas or those 10 names of plant names or whatever. And then from there, I will create my own plant names to go with it and stuff like that. So I don't mind using it for
Hmm.
something like that. I have done just for funsies, gone through and been like, written something out and then been like,
Hmm.
okay, I want you to, this is my plot, write this for me. And it's like horrible. Like they use like these big, huge, like extravagant words, especially if you say that it's like, for a fantasy novel or for a mystery. It'll use these big, ridiculous words and it will over describe things. And it's just so like, you can tell that it's monotone when you read
Mhm.
it, and there's no feeling behind it yet. So,
Yet.
yeah. And that's
Yeah.
exactly it. And I think that's where I don't know how far away we are from that point, but it will be really tough for writers because I think we're going to go through a transition period where, you know, AI uses an algorithm to create those words. And
Mhm.
eventually, once that algorithm is locked down, I can guarantee you that publishers are going to have that and they're going to know if you're using AI to do your work. And then from that point on, there's going to be no need for writers anymore because then publishers will have the ability to just go
Sure.
out and create their own books,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a
Thanks.
really tough line. And I mean, we've kind of gone full circle with people who used to read all the time and then stop reading, and now people are buying books again. So I'm
Mhm.
hoping we're kind of going to do the same thing with AI, where it's like people are trying to transition to it, and no one actually really likes it, so we just keep going,
Mhm.
back full circle. So
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things. The one thing that AI is never going to have on a human being is really the personality. Like not the personality in the writing, but like the writers that I choose to read and to follow on social media and those kind of things like that I choose to take into my life are people that I can connect with as a human being. AI is not going to do that.
Yeah.
Like even if it pretends to, like it can only have so much of a presence.
Right.
Like I really like Dan Wells as a person.
Mhm.
Like he's a good writer, but he's somebody that I connect with, even though, never talked to him, never interacted with him at all. It is the fact that he is a human being, he is flawed and weird and quirky. Those are the things that I like and latch onto. And that is why I choose to buy his books.
Hmm.
And so, like, that's something like AI may end up being able to write just as well as us,
Mhm.
but it's not going to be a person, and like that for me is enough. And at the same time, on the opposite end of the spectrum, even if it writes better than me and I never get to sell any book ever, like I'm still going to write because I enjoy it.
Hmm.
So
I always think of it as like when I'm looking for a certain word, right? I pull out, my thesaurus and I look through it and I'm like, okay, there's one certain word that it's going to be
mhm,
just right. And so I can go through and I understand the difference, for example, between my character swatting at someone because they're annoyed
Mhm.
or my character hitting someone, which is like physical violence.
Mhm.
And right now, AI doesn't have the ability to do that. So, they're going to go through and they're going to say, like, oh, and she hit him
Mhm.
instead of she swatted at him, which
Yeah.
that's way different than hitting somebody.
Right. Yeah.
And it completely changes the whole
Right.
tone of the story. And I
Mhm.
think that's where the difference is right now is that they
mhm,
cannot yet get that tone
Right.
just right.
Or
yeah,
that
We can.
yeah,
voice that we all have. Like I was just when you're talking, Austin, about your character that Dan Wells, he has a voice, right? I mean, I'm thinking
hmm
of who like Ernest Hemingway, or I'm sorry, Ernest Hemingway had
hmm
like the way he wrote. Like you don't have to tell me, right? You just pull it out and have me read it, and I'll know immediately. Oh, this is Ernest Hemingway. You just know who wrote it. Stephen King. Just the way he's just really just bold and just just the way he writes. I sound horrible describing how he writes, but everyone has their own voice, and that's exactly what AI does not have. Yeah, there's no soul there. It's just a bunch of words, and oh, here's a story, blah 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 blah. Like you said, Holly, just very flat, no tone, monotone, if you will, right?
yeah. And like too, it's like it'd be one thing if there wasn't enough media in the world already. But there's already more media on my to be read list, my to be watched list. Like I don't have time for this. Like now, will it be interesting down the road when it can like write a script and then like do all the visualizations and make a movie like perfectly to my taste? Will it be interesting? Yes. The problem is I won't get to share that experience with anybody else and talk about it because if everybody has things that are perfectly tailored to them, shared experiences are gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a weird thing to think about.
Mm-hmm. All right. So thumbs down, for all of us on writing.
Oh yeah, that's what we were talking about.
Audiobooks. I when I was shopping around for my audiobooks, I was in I'm in Reddit so much, but I was in their audiobooks. I think it's ACX, Audible, and they're in their subreddits, and they were talking about how companies were hiring real voice artists, to read, and then they're like, okay, but how come it's only like so much? And whoever hired them said, well, we only need your voice. We have these words that we want you to repeat, and we're recording them to use as an AI voice later. And she
Mhm.
just like stopped immediately, and she's like, yeah, no, I'm not cool with that. That's my voice. And then she never heard from him again. But like that's what they're doing for. I mean, and now they're just starting to come out with all AI audiobooks, where I have no idea what it sounds like, but it probably just sounds just like your Google Maps,
Mm.
Yeah.
navigator or something like that.
So
So what do you think about audiobooks?
I will say, as far as it sounding like the audiobooks or the Google Maps Navigator,
Yeah.
it's actually creepily good.
Mm.
So I recommended this earlier. The Planet Money podcast did a 3-part series on AI where they had it write a script for them and then actually had the AI train on one of the former hosts' voices. And it was only like 30 minutes of their voice just talking about random stuff, and then was able to completely like narrate the podcast, and to the point where like they put the same sentence in multiple times and it would get the inflection slightly differently and like
Uh,
these modulations that made it sound more human. So I
wow.
will say it can actually, that has come a long
Mm.
way,
Mm.
which is where it gets,
Yeah.
bad, because you could, take 30 minutes of somebody's audio and
Hmm.
then have it in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Like Jet Li was supposed to be in one of the Matrix movies and he refused because they wanted to do the same thing with like his movements and like
Mm.
copy his style and be able to use him in perpetuity.
Mm.
And like
Hmm.
that's an issue
Yeah.
because he's trained his whole life to do those things.
Right.
And in the same way, a voice actor has, worked up to this point in their skill to be able to make all of these things.
Hmm.
Um, but if you wanted to do the same thing as an author in order to read your own books,
Hmm.
that's where I'm like, okay, well, maybe I could see that. Like,
For
if,
yourself or
yeah, so like say
for
Barack
publication?
Obama wanted to like have his own audiobook
Okay.
read in his voice, but he didn't want to sit and read the whole thing. Like if he
Right.
wanted to pay somebody to do this service where they extracted his voice to use only for his audiobook, that I could see as a use case.
Right.
But like to do it to somebody else feels like
Yeah.
such a terrible thing.
So I can't like copy Holly's voice and use her voice, for multiple characters in my stories.
Yeah,
That's what you're
exactly. Yeah.
saying.
So like if you wanted to do it like, cuz like I enjoy a book read by the author. There's just something about it that's, fun for me. With the expectation that they maybe put a little bit more care into the particulars, which
Yeah.
is the ironic thing of using AI to replicate it. But like, there's just something interesting about it. So I could
Mhm.
see that as a use case because like you're the end, like the voice and the words. So like that's one case that I could see, but outside of that, it just feels wrong.
Mm. Feels wrong. How about you, Holly?
I think it's really interesting. I listen to audiobooks sometimes, like if I'm out walking the dogs, walking in traffic when I should not be listening to an audiobook or anything. Um, or when I'm driving long distance and stuff like that. I like to throw on an audiobook, but I'm very much like a physical book person.
Mhm.
However, with that being said, I do listen to audiobooks sometimes, and there are definitely a few things that I struggle with them, and those are audiobooks that are done by actual people. I could never do an audiobook myself because I am terrible at like reading books out loud. I just can never like
Mhm.
portray
Mhm.
the emotions. And so that's why for me, I think that doing it by AI just doesn't make sense because it's the same thing, right? Like
Mhm.
you never get, it's the same thing as with writing. You don't get that tone, that like that certain tone, or like, that you can imply a meaning with your words, or you can't really put sarcasm into AI,
Mm.
without someone on the back end having to go through and be like, oh, this point is supposed to be sarcastic. This
Mhm.
part, this is supposed to be like subtle humor. This is supposed to be a little flirtatious. Their
Mhm.
AI is not going to understand that. Whereas someone who's reading the book can go through and like as they're reading it onto the audio recording, say, this is supposed to be flirty. I understand what that means. This is how you would say something like that to portray that. I use Word to do all my writing, and I thought it would be really fun to just listen to the first few chapters of my book.
Mhm.
And so I just had the Word go through and read it for me, and it was so horrendously like monotone, just like reading word for word. And then she said, and
Mhm.
I'm like, that is like what I associate AI with.
Mhm. Yeah, so, like, I mean, I get that, like, because 'cause I'm dyslexic, so, like, whenever I'm doing, like, big picture edits, I actually do text to speech because it helps me. Because like, I'm gonna assume that, like, oh, if I read something wrong, like, it's not that the words were wrong, it's that I read them wrong,
Mhm.
and so hearing it, I'm like, "Oh, that was super wrong," so I can go and edit it really quickly. So, like, I appreciate that it's a more natural sounding speech now. But, like, I feel like if you're going to do those things, you have to pay in such a way for those actors that they understand that, like, "Oh, this is something that's gonna get used in perpetuity, like, there's gonna be royalties." It has to be a very different pay structure than I'm reading an audiobook that's gonna be, like, used for this one project.
Right.
Like, because that's maybe a couple of $1,000, but if you're talking about, like, using this for hundreds of audiobooks or whatever down the road, like, there has to be some sort of way to compensate for that. And, like, I think that's the complicated thing of the future is, like, as more and more things get automated, how do we award those people for their work as it gets used more and more and more?
I think it also depends too, like you have two different situations, right? Like situation one is like a company is going to hire me and they're going to take my voice, they're going to pay me for it that one time, like you're saying, but then they're going to use it for multiple projects. That's different.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be, paid for every single one of those times that you're using all of my voice, but then you also have to look at it if it's just an individual thing where it's like, well, technically they're only using like 5,000 of my words. And then from those 5,000 words, they're going to create the whole book. Well, there's no way I'm going to pay you the same amount as I would be if you were doing the whole book because you're not doing as much work.
Mm.
So then it's
Right.
also people, then you also have to consider like, how is that going to damage the industry?
Right.
Because there's going to be less people willing to donate their voice. Like, yes, it's less work, but yeah, it's less money.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Well, and I heard that, and I don't know this for a fact, but they're charging the same amount of money. I won't say what company, okay? Because I have a book in there and I don't want any trouble. I don't want any trouble, guys. You can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. But I'm
Mhm.
just saying. But they charge the same amount of money as if it was written or read by a real person. And that was, for some reason, that was the stickler in another subreddit. I was like, they're pissed at that because, like, hey, wait a second. If you're just running it through a program to read, I mean, Jiminy Christmas, you should charge a lot less money, but nope, it's still the same price. But
Yeah.
yeah, I hired Elizabeth Lagley to do my audiobook for my first book, Curse of Shadows, and I remember just the fun process of looking for a different narrator, and I must have listened to about nearly 20 different people, all reading the exact same few sentences, and just the first three words out of her mouth, I'm like, she's the one I want because it just makes a huge difference. She just read it like perfectly, and I'm looking at it right now. Only 10 ratings, but 4.3 stars. She did fantastic work with that, and I will never go back. Yeah, I would definitely be a big thumbs down on AI reading my audiobook. I'd rather have a real person. There's just something better about that, right? Like I want real. I think what we're all getting at is like there's just with humans. There's flaws, and that's okay. That's we're all flawed. So I'd rather connect with that. I'd rather make a neat connection with that than just running something through a program.
Yeah.
For the stuff
At
we're talking about.
at this point, I will also admit that one of my protagonists, like halfway through the book, you realize that they're actually a robot. So that's a whole thing too. Is like the idea of like where the line of what makes us human is like a very fascinating thing to
Mm,
me. And like the AI that we have now is not what like we're talking about when we talk about like artificial like general intelligence. Like we're not creating people by any stretch of the imagination.
Mhm.
But like at some point, like we might like get to that point where it's like, where is the dividing line between synthetic life and
Mhm.
bionic life, or whatever, however you want to call that?
Yeah.
And so like that's something, as like somebody who writes sci-fi occasionally, like I like to dwell on, like at what point does a machine accident, like the glitches in a machine, become the same thing as the flaws in a human being? Like
Mm.
it's, you know,
Yeah.
it's this weird fun thing of sci-fi writing of
Yeah.
like, okay, like maybe let's not always look at the dark side, but let's look at
Right.
like we're at the precipice of a birth of a new
Sure.
species, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe
Are
let's
they
not all be doom and gloom.
are they a person or are they property or what? No, that's a whole different
Yeah,
topic
that's
for
a
another time.
whole thing, and that
Yeah.
is a whole struggle of his story.
Yeah. Right on. Well, so writing was thumbs down, chat GPT for research thumbs up, cover art thumbs down, character art thumbs up. Editing, did we do editing?
We didn't, but like, I mean, Word
For
technically
you.
uses like a very simple
Yeah.
AI to tell you that things
I
are wrong.
feel
So like,
yeah, exactly. Or what's the other one that's
Grammarly.
Grammarly is pretty much like that.
Grammarly
Yeah, that's
and AutoCrit, there's a lot of ones that are
Yeah.
out there that are
Yeah.
good first passes.
right. Yeah,
You
AutoCrit-
should-
that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
AutoCrit is really interesting too. I tried their platform out for a while before I went back to Word, because I feel like I'm ancient and I can't do any.
I feel like I'm ancient.
more more
Holy mackerel.
technologically advanced.
You're the youngest person on this podcast, aren't you?
Easily.
And I mean, I still play
Well,
Nintendo
easily.
64. Okay, like I just, but
Oh,
anyway,
you know
so
what?
I
GameCube. Let's be real, it's the best.
I tried AutoCrit, and there were some interesting things about it. Like they give you the opportunity to like put in kind of your general outline, and it will help craft the story for you. It will help, if you get stuck somewhere, it'll be like, where do I go from here options.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And I thought like that is interesting because that does use AI, but it was just like, I don't know, for me it just felt like that to me is too much. It's not really editing, I guess, but it's
Yeah.
just too much. Too many things to look at, I feel like. And they also
Mhm.
would break down and be like, you use this word this many times compared to
See.
this artist or compared to this
Mhm.
writer or this author, and
Mhm.
this is
I
how
will-
many adverbs they used versus you. And I'm like,
Oh, no, thanks.
ugh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will say actually the repeated like overuse of words and phrases is something I do enjoy about AutoCrit, because I get stuck in that. It like gives you like a chart of like your sentence length and your paragraph length and your chapter length to show like, is it too consistent?
Mhm.
And like that visualization is very helpful for me. Like as a painter, like getting to see my book in a visual thing is just like, okay, like this makes sense. It doesn't have a good flow. It gets too stagnant here.
Yeah.
So those kind of things are helpful. But like I'm also like I'm in automation now as my day job. So like I could do that for myself, and I don't have to pay AutoCrit to do that.
Mhm.
But like I get why that service is helpful.
Yeah.
No.
I was just gonna say, it's really interesting how like it's two different perspectives, right? Like you have your perspective where you're like, I like to see like everything is not the same, or is the same length or is not the same length or whatever. Whereas I would see that and be like, oh my gosh, they're not all the same length. They should be all the same length.
Oh no.
But that's not true for writing, right? Like
Mhm,
that
mhm.
sometimes it has to be a short sentence, sometimes it has to be a really long
You
one.
got to get that roller coaster.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so like that for me would be really hard, because that would
Mhm.
just nope.
No. Yeah, and then I just mostly just use Grammarly, and it's but I don't pay for it. It's just the free version.
Mhm.
It's just very simple editing, because honestly, most of my stuff, I'm like, I know there's a better way to say this. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna give it to my editor. I do have a real editor. We're gonna have her on in January next month. And I just, because sometimes she has a great way of just, hey, if you just move this around, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's perfect. And I mean, that's what I pay her for. So
Yeah.
I'd rather go with that.
Yeah, and that's been something too that like having a writing group has been super helpful with, because
Yeah.
it's like I get so used to seeing things, so getting like 5-6 people's perspective on it. It's like, hey, well, maybe you should rearrange this like paragraph, or like you can
Yeah.
just cut this. Like none of the like automated editing services are going to be like, hey, cut the sentence.
Right.
It's not needed. they're going to be like, oh, hey, did you mean to like use a contraction here? Like,
Right.
okay, yes, helpful,
The
but
small
very
stuff.
different notes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's, I think that's exactly why I would, and it's perfect. I think we're all thumbs up for editing for yourself, because you need some, we
Hmm.
do need some, a little bit of help. And I think that's a great benefit, honestly.
It makes your
Grammarly
life
and Autocorrect.
easier. It makes
It
your
does.
editor's life easier.
It will, yes. But there are definitely things like, my story is I handed the whole thing, my 7th revision, off to my editor, and she just totally X'd out the entire first chapter and said, your story doesn't start here. Your story starts at chapter 2. And that's
Yeah.
something that Autocrit and Grammarly will never ever do. It's not going to do anything like that. And that's where being human rocks. But
Yeah, it's never going to circle a whole chunk or whole page and go
Mhm.
boring.
Right. Yeah, which your editor should do. Like, hey, I'm falling asleep here. But so yeah, so editing, like what we're talking about, not in the big picture kind of way, but just
Mhm.
so I think it's a thumbs up for all of us.
Mhm.
Audiobooks, thumbs down. Was I right on that? I think I was.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, like,
Austin.
yeah, so like, I have that one use case, like I could see a use for it, or like
Yeah.
if you paid the person well enough, and then like
Right.
you'd still have to, it would still be like really honestly almost as much work, because you'd have to go through and make sure the AI was doing it correctly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
is my whole thing with AI. So as I said, I had forgotten a character, right? Wrote
Right.
my character, like he was in probably like 4 out of the first like 5 or 6 chapters, and then I just completely forgot about them
Hmm.
until like chapter 40
That's
something.
sad.
And so if I know, it was
So
devastating.
lost and alone.
Totally forgot him. So I asked ChatGPT, like, hey, I forgot my character. What should I do? And this is why I think that AI is a problem, because this is
Okay.
the solution.
What was it?
Ooh.
It says, consider introducing the character organically, perhaps through a pivotal event that requires their presence. Ensure their inclusion feels integral to the story and doesn't disrupt the existing flow. That way, you can seamlessly reintegrate the character into your narrative.
Now,
Okay.
I will
Like-
say, great advice, just not for your
What?
question.
Like what?
This is a character that's been here for 5 chapters and then nothing for 35. They're gonna walk back in and be like, "Oh, sorry guys, I was
Yeah.
just taking care of something over there." Like,
Yeah. They just bump
you
into
know?
somebody and he just
Yeah.
lose him as the Deus Ex Machina, or
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what?
yeah.
Then people are like, wait, where did he come from? And you're like, I introduced him in chapter 1.
But Holly, there's a lot of big words in that answer. Is there like an explain like I'm 5 option button for make it
Actually,
simpler?
Yeah, then you just have to ask it, be like, "Hey, give me 5 other solutions." And then it'll be like,
Okay.
some of them are like, sometimes it gets so much worse.
So, well, and like that, so that's the thing, is there's great uses for it, but creative writing as a final product is not it.
Right.
Like my wife
Yeah.
teaches ESL, and so like come up with example sentences of how to use these words is a great use case for ChatGPT.
Okay.
Write me a horror mystery novel, maybe not.
Yeah.
I will say too, I know ChatGPT has like certain standards where they're not allowed to like discuss certain things. So like when it would come to like a horror, like
Mhm.
they will block it and be like, or they'll be like, this could be violating our safety standards.
Oh, okay.
So
Interesting.
that also, I mean,
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, I was playing around with it, asking about systems of magic, and I said something about not making something as black and white, and it was like, I'm sorry, but that goes against our like
Oh,
discrimination policies. And I'm like,
Nice.
that's not what I meant by black and white. But I mean, I get it. Like, we don't want it to be discriminatory or like encourage those things.
Right.
But like the subtlety of its language understanding is not there.
Yep.
I'm surprised. I feel like Austin would be over here like, give me 5 ways to like violently murder someone, like a
Oh, no.
character.
Oh, I definitely tried that, and it was like, because like I'm writing a pulp mystery novel series. I'm like, hey, give me like 30 good ideas for murder, and it's like, I can't do that. It's like,
And then you're like, but it's for a
touche.
novel. And then they're like,
That's
oh,
for a novel.
okay.
No, it went, sure it is.
The FBI guy in the van just having a laugh.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
that went out the window whenever I was very young and checking out books at the library. So
Yeah. All right. Well, this is a great discussion. I definitely am glad we had it. And one day we'll have like an expert because we'll definitely revisit this someday
yeah,
when
but
all
it
of
also
our
feels like
butts are
we're
on
all
the
on the same
line.
page.
It
So that's
does
nice.
pretty much. Yeah, yeah,
Mostly.
yeah. And it would have been fine. Yeah, it's not like we don't have a place for you next time, Austin, but
Oh,
but we
I
will.
see. Because I'm the one with the hot takes.
Yeah, that's funny. We're gonna check the back of your neck for some extension cord plug or something. But
Well,
That's
I
why he
mean,
gets so much stuff done.
yeah. Oh my gosh, you're right. What the
All makes
heck?
sense now.
Yeah, two
you
books
you
for
caught me.
November. Yeah, okay.
You caught me. Now, to be fair, I only made it to like 73,000 words
Oh, to
in
be fair.
November. So,
Okay,
well,
whatever.
it's not two full nanos because I
Yeah.
got distracted and started building a video game instead. So that's a whole other thing.
Oh my gosh. God, please
It
go
was
to
his
sleep.
own computer programming.
Yeah. This is what I
Well,
want to do.
it is my day job. So
Right. Yeah. All right. So that's fantastic. So if you have thoughts on AI, experience with AI, hot takes, please let us know in the comments or write back to us.
what about
S-
don'ts?
I
oh
was
no, don't. You're right.
I was like waiting for him to segue back to it.
Don't. Okay, yeah, don't. What about our don't? This is our fun part of our show where we I'll go around and talk about
Where
our
we
don'ts. All right, so go for it. Dawson, you brought it up.
Oh, well,
I
that didn't mean
totally
I had
forgot.
something ready.
Ask ChatGPT.
Yeah, I mean, so I would say don't forget to include in your writing what makes you you.
Mm,
Like, yeah, there's all these tips and advices that you can get, whether it's through ChatGPT or like YouTubers and booktubers and all this stuff of like, hey, here's how you should improve your writing. Don't do this. And now I'm telling you don't do other things. But like you being you is what is your voice as a writer. So don't let anybody take you away from you.
mm,
That was a weird sentence, but
yeah.
like your faults are what make you fantastic. And don't forget that.
Oh, I like that. That should be on a shirt. Your faults are what make you fantastic, honey. See if that flies.
And that's how I got slapped. Or
Were
what
you
was it?
slapped or
Swatted, Holly?
swatted?
That's how
I feel like that's a good shirt too.
Yeah.
That's how we got swatted. All right. That's
Uh.
funny. You have one, Holly? Or should I go?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, I don't be afraid to do your own research on this. So, as it is with a lot of topics, there's so many different opinions, and if you feel like something is going to work for you, do your research and ask people in the industry how they would feel about it. Some people might get defensive, so be aware that that might happen. But there might be people out there who are now going through school for this kind of technology, and they're looking to enter the workforce, making money, as an AI artist as well. So just be prepared for some backlash for any of your questions, but don't be afraid to ask the questions anyways, because I think it's just such a hot topic right now, that it's worth just diving into it.
Yeah. I would say my voice is all jacked up now. I would say don't don't disqualify yourself as a writer, because writing is hard. Okay, all of us are thumbs up on that. We all agree. It's sometimes like I'm taking a break. I'm just not writing anything. But that doesn't mean I'm saying, well, I suck. I know there's something in me. And if you're a beginning writer, an advanced writer, it's always going to be hard. That's just how it is. But we produce things, you learn, you grow, you listen to some awesome podcasts like ours, where you do a little bit of research, but like you grow and you were made to create. You're here because you're creative. And so I would definitely say, yeah, don't dismiss yourself. Don't disqualify yourselves. There's just something awesome in there. This is something I've always heard, and I loved it, that there's someone out there waiting to read your book. Like they can't wait to read your book. Okay. So don't let, I know you're saying, well, AI, it's a lot faster and I don't know how to do it. No. It's just a machine. There's no soul there. You have a soul. Use it. Use your soul. Bleed. Right. I think that's an Ernest Hemingway. I cannot say his name. Too many syllables. Ernest Hemingway wrote, to write is just to sit in front of the at the keyboard and bleed. It's paraphrasing, obviously, but yeah. So that's mine. All right.
So good. That's so good.
Yeah.
So
All right. Well, thank
Another
you
one.
guys.
Hold on, I'm gonna add to that. This is funny. I don't know
Go for
why
it.
I was laying in bed last night thinking about this. It was quite hilarious. And I think it was Stephen King. He said something about this the spouse of a writer is the loneliest job.
Oh, gosh.
I also wanted to put that on the shirt.
it's pretty good. It's pretty good. And like too, it's like you think about like, okay, if 1 in a million people likes your book, that means 8,000 people will like your book. That is a lot of people.
Yeah,
Just gonna throw it out there.
it is. You're right.
I'd feel great if 8,000 people bought my book.
Somebody hugged me, a complete stranger, signed their book, and do you have 2 hugs? I'm like, yeah, and like I got a hug. Wow.
There
Yeah,
you go.
take that, AI. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. All right, so we're done. This is a very long episode, and I loved it. We'll go for 3 hours next time, but for now,
Half of it was my technical difficulties.
Oh,
as
yeah.
usual.
no.
Yeah. Well, next time we'll talk about the economy of words.
Yeah. Okay. So, hey, don't forget to write and describe to our channels at the links below. Or if you're on Audible, please give us please follow us. Please, write reviews. We love that, either on YouTube or what did I say? Audible? Not an Audible. Apple or Podbean or however you listen, Spotify, however, right? Give us a nice review. We would love that. So you don't miss any of the Writers Realm content. We always love to hear from our listeners. So if you have a question or a topic you want us to dive into, please get in touch, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.